How's it going, everyone, and welcome to 4Mile Ranch. Today I'm excited to be sharing with you a 7.62x39 AR-15 pattern rifle. This one is from Bear Creek Arsenal. It is a side charging option that they do offer on their site. They do have quite a bit of a variety, but nonetheless, this is a 16-inch configured 7.62x39. So I wanted to go ahead and dive into my experience behind this. This is definitely something that is going to be a little bit more budget oriented. At the time of making this video, this comes in at under $600. So that is quite a bit of value if you ask me. So half you guys watching this may immediately be hating on Bear Creek Arsenal solely because of their price point. I just want to remind you that the more people we can get into the Second Amendment community, especially with controversial patterned rifles like this, the more we have in our ranks, so to speak, that want to speak up and speak out about not losing their potential Second Amendment rights. So do keep that in mind. I think companies like Bear Creek Arsenal are doing a great thing in terms of making it affordable to get into this industry that a lot of us, hopefully you watching this, are a part of, and maybe you're interested in getting your first rifle. So if you fall into any of that, stick around. I'm going to dive into my experience behind this rifle in terms of accuracy and reliability, and then kind of get into a little bit more details of. First and foremost, I do want to disclose my relationship with Bear Creek Arsenal, and that is that I initially invested some of my own hard-earned money into some of their products. I had a great outcome, really enjoyed it, and since then, occasionally they will send me some products to review on the channel. They don't send me money, they don't give me ammo, so no other relationship exists other than I am occasionally privileged with getting to try out some of their gear solely for the purpose of sharing my honest and unbiased opinions for you. And in such, I wanted to give you that disclaimer that this rifle was provided by Bear Creek Arsenal. Didn't exactly look like this when I got it, so I've made my own personal touches and my own investments to kind of get it up to what I would prefer it to be. And we'll go ahead and get into that in a little bit more detail here in this video. So I guess on that note, that's a good place to start off in terms of my initial impression when pulling it out of the box. To date, I've never had an issue with any Bear Creek Arsenal products. This 7.62x39 side charger is included in that. The fit and finish were all very well done. I didn't notice anything that stood out to me. I did put witness marks on pretty much all the hardware. That's going to be pretty standard for any time I review anything that involves hardware, which is the majority of things. I want to make sure nothing's backing out or loosening up. And if it does, I want to be able to document that to, again, share as much information with you guys as I can. The trigger broke very consistently at just under 6.5 pounds, which to most may not sound super light. However, it was very consistent on both the break and the reset and made it feel much lighter than my scale read. I did add some furniture to the M-LOK handguard, so that is the cool thing. You do have 360 degrees of M-LOK attachments, including the very top section. So for those of you guys that are into the clip-on thermal or night vision game, this is still compatible with those kind of devices if you add an M-LOK rail section. For those of you that aren't into that realm of shooting or hunting, you will be saving some weight and size by them removing the top rails. Now, being that this is an AR platform shooting an AK platform cartridge, I did want to test the accuracy compared to an actual AK. So what I did is I took out my 8K platform to the range the same time I took this out, and I tested a variety of ammo to compare. So I'm going to go ahead and show you the results. Okay, so here we have a 50-yard target, so keep in mind that I'm assuming that the margin of error is going to be double at 100 yards. I just wanted to save myself the walking back and forth because I'm lazy and that's just the way we do it sometimes. So on the left-hand side is all AK, on the right-hand side is all Bear Creek Arsenal 7.62x39 side charger. Starting with 122 grain Tula FMJs, again a 3.5 MOA group, which is what it would be at 100 yards. That would include all 5 rounds. If we exclude this flyer, because we had some nice groupings, 2 and 2 here, whatever happened with that one, not quite sure, then it would go down to a 2 MOA again at 100 yards. Now the same exact ammo fired at the same power, so all this was through an 8 power LPVO on both rifles. Actually ended up getting a 6 MOA group. If we do the same thing for the AK and throw out the worst flyer, it would be a 4 MOA group again at 100 yards. Although this was much more of a shotgun pattern, so I don't know that that's necessarily a flyer. This one I think you could justify a little bit more of a flyer. Granted, still not the tightest group of the day. So let's see, let's go ahead and go to 123 grain Wolf ammo out of the AK, 3.5 MOA group there. Not super consistent, didn't really even make them touch, but that is what we got. The Bear Creek Arsenal I did get a really nice 3-round group going, and then I had this flyer. I thought it was maybe me, but then I fired again and there was another low one. So not sure if we can call that a flyer or not. That is what we got out of this group, which ends up, because of those, being a 3 MOA group. But as you can see, there is some definite potential. That's about a 1/4 MOA group at, again, 50 yards. So that would have been a 1/2 MOA group at 100. And then last, but definitely not least, because this was the best performer for the BCA 762x39 side charger, we got a 1 MOA group, or 1/2 MOA at 50 yards, making it a 1 MOA at 100 yard equivalent. So really, really tight group there. And unfortunately, it got a little less tight from that round there. The AK started doing nice and tight, and then it threw a couple at some point during the group. I can't remember if these 3 were in order and then those 2 landed there, but there you have it. That would be a 4 MOA equivalent at 100 yards. So the BCA is definitely more accurate than a standard AK. Granted, this is sample size of 1 for both platforms. Keep in mind, guys, this was some really cheap steel cased ammo, all made in Russia. It just makes sense to, use that to test 762x39. Now, roughly, you're going to get twice the accuracy out of the AK platform I tested, which was a Romanian Wazir 10. Obviously, it's also been modified. It's not factory. So take that for what it's worth. It is a sample size of 1 representing both platforms, but I was pleasantly surprised to see that even with really, really cheap surplus steel ammo from Russia, it shot roughly twice as good or twice as accurate as my AK pattern rifle. So if you're looking for something more accurate than an AK but shoots an AK round, this is definitely a great option. Now, the other thing that gives this a distinct advantage over a typical AK pattern rifle is that rule of thumb is you don't necessarily want to suppress AKs unless you use a suppressor designed for AKs that actually, as you get closer to the end of the suppressor, the inner diameter or that bore diameter slowly tapers open, because it's accounting for the lack of perfect concentricity on an AK pattern rifle. That's very common. Now, I'm not saying that you can't use other cans with AKs. It's a good rule of thumb to verify it with either a straight rod or take it to a professional gunsmith. This I wasn't worried about. I always do concentricity checks whenever I throw a can on a rifle for the first time. So that's good practice so you don't ruin a year's wait for a can. But no issues. This ran both suppressed and unsuppressed flawlessly. Majority of the shooting I did with this rifle ended up being suppressed because I had an extra mount for my 30 cal can, and again, concentricity issues weren't a thing. So it made it very enjoyable overall to shoot suppressed. Now, one last caveat or data point to talk about in terms of advantages versus disadvantages of the AR versus AK platform, again, when we're speaking to the 7.62x39 caliber, is that the piston of the AK isn't super well sealed. You'll still get a bit of piston pop. It's not going to make it for a very enjoyable platform to suppress in general. Obviously, it's going to reduce quite a bit of noise signature, but it's not going to be as enjoyable as an AR pattern platform like this. So this was a very enjoyable platform to shoot suppressed. Now, since it is a side charger, you don't have the charging handle. There's a little less openings in the rear. So in terms of gas blowback, it again made it more enjoyable than a typical even AR pattern platform, since I went with the side charging option. I'm going to go ahead and transition into the overall reliability of this platform. And that's where things get a little bit interesting. So it is my understanding that the steel case 7.62x39 Russian ammo, especially the cheap bulk stuff, has a little bit harder primers and harder casings than some of the 5.56 or 2.23 equivalent, even on the steel side of the house. So in the comments below, roast me if I'm wrong on that, but that is my current understanding. And because of that, a common issue that is also my understanding at the time of making this video is that it's really, really hard on firing pins in the AR side of the house if you're in an AR patterned 7.62x39 rifle. And I did actually break the firing pin on this at roughly, it was between the 250 and 300 round count while shooting this. So I actually, which was roughly 3 months ago, so I put roughly 90 days into being behind this gun, plinking around with it. After I broke that firing pin, I contacted BCA. They do advertise an enhanced firing pin for their 7.62x39 platforms. They were unsure if this one predated that or not, so they sent me one of their enhanced firing pins, which is what's currently in the gun. I then had to take the time to match that round count to see if it was repeatable. So I've had another 300 rounds-ish since I broke that first extractor for a total round count of about 600 rounds through this platform, which has now been in my possession for going on 6 months. So that is why this is a little delayed in getting out. I've had this in my inventory for a while, plinking around on my occasional range visits. That was the only major reliability issue I had. Now, granted, guys, I know a lot of you are gonna say that may or may not be a deal breaker for you, but firing pins can be had for about $15. So for me, getting this for the price point, and especially if you're gonna be using it as a range toy, for me, I think it's a compromise in the scenario where if that ends up being a consistent failure, having a $15 spare firing pin in my ammo box, to me, it's a non-issue. Again, sample size of 1. This may not happen very often, but it did happen to me, and I wanted to disclose that experience, again, between 250 and 300 rounds. And that wasn't all just shooting, 1 round at a time with a few seconds in between like some gun ranges allow. That was, running it pretty hard, doing some mag dumps in there, and maybe that helped induce some of that premature failure of the firing pin. I don't know. Again, just sharing that data point with you. Now, I did have a second, I don't want to necessarily call it a failure, but it was, but I strongly believe it was user induced. Due to the fact that it is a side charging platform, there's actually essentially a little set screw, an oversized set screw in the back to plug the port where a charging handle would normally be. Now, BCA included an O-ring in that. To get your bolt carrier group, you first have to remove an Allen nut from the side charger so that you can then slide the bolt carrier assembly out the back after first removing that set screw, for lack of a better way. I'm going to call it a threaded plug. That's probably more accurate. So if you remove the threaded plug and the Allen key from the side charger, you can remove the whole bolt carrier assembly. They do put a rubber O-ring around that threaded plug. You got to make sure you don't over tighten that threaded plug, which is exactly what I did. I completely cinched it down. It doesn't need to be super tight, just sealed. That's all it is. It's just a seal, make the gas is going to find the path of least resistance coming out. So as long as it's sealed, it's going to go out through the side and not in the back towards your face. So me over tightening it, I kind of smushed that O-ring, which made the bottom edge hang into the region where the bolt carrier group was reciprocating in the buffer tube. So at one point, this was towards the very, very end of my testing and evaluation of this platform, it took off the bottom chunk of that O-ring. And as luck would have it, for me at least, that little piece of rubber happened to fall down into the trigger housing and get in between the sear and the disconnect and the important meat and potatoes of the trigger pack. I mean, the odds of that happening, I would imagine, are very, very slim. Maybe I should buy a lottery ticket, but it fell in there just right to where the trigger wouldn't reset. So I didn't know what was going on. I knew that, it seemed at the time like something potentially catastrophic, something totally broke. But when I took it back home and opened it up, I found that little piece of the O-ring wedged just in the absolute worst case scenario spot. And it did give me a dead trigger at the range. So again, I think that's me as a user over tightening it. So full disclosure, don't over tighten it, just make it sealed. But again, it's something that did happen to me. There's obviously potential, however minuscule of a chance, it did happen to me. And again, I wanted to share that with you. But I do want to emphasize that that was me as a user just probably taking things too far and not really paying attention to what I was doing when I was closing the gun back up. Otherwise, no other issues, and throughout the approximate 600 round count through this rifle, I have not cleaned it a single time. I didn't oil it right out of the box. I did virtually nothing to it, and it has been reliable otherwise. Overall, I've really enjoyed this rifle. I really think a 7.62x39 in an AR pattern rifle is fun because it's easy to suppress. It's easy to, make it your own like you see here. So that's about all I have on this one, guys. If you have any questions, leave it in the comments below. I'll try to address those. Again, I don't get any kickback. I'm not an affiliate of Bear Creek Arsenal. I just truly enjoy shooting their stuff because it's affordable and effective to shoot. And again, I did invest my own money in their products prior to them sending occasional products for me to continue testing out and sharing my thoughts and opinions with you. So just want to point that out one last time that I would not be posting this video if it's not something that I would personally spend my money on. And I can say that I still would absolutely spend my money on this. And I do recommend Bear Creek Arsenal to friends and family that don't necessarily want to spend thousands of dollars for some fun range toys. So with that, guys, I want to thank you for taking the time to stop by the 4Mile Ranch channel. And as always, Have a good one.